Well, hello everyone, Texie88 here, and welcome to another review. And now I'm taking a look at the Psygnosis 1989 game Shadow of the Beast for the Commodore Amiga. Now, up until this point, the Amiga was not having the best use of its hardware in games, and which tended more not to be direct ports from the Atari ST. However, this is the game which is arguably believed to have single-handedly changed all that. And by and large, once this game came out and blew everyone away with its visuals and sound, it pretty much killed stone dead all of the shameless ST ports. As the mist clears, the eerie image of a forest forms in front of you. To the east, a vast plain extends towards the horizon. Westward, however, in the thick of the forest, 1,000 pairs of eyes pierce the mist, glaring despondently back at you. Don't they know it's rude to stare? So there's the character I control. You got punch, and you can jump, and you can do a jumping kick like that. And look at the lovely parallax scrolling in this. Look at the foreground. However, yeah, one thing that is very irritating about the gameplay is you have to time your attacks perfectly, or you'll take a hit. And if you look very carefully, there it opens. Inside, a winding staircase descends into darkness, pausing for a while to allow your eyes to adjust. You make your way down the steps, which seem to deteriorate into makeshift planks the further you go. Oh, bloody hell. Yeah. In hindsight, anyone who wasn't aware of the Amiga's history and this game would not understand what the fuss was about. I mean, yeah, as a game, this fails miserably. It's too simplistic and too unfair. But it as something which goes into kind of thing, it shows what the Amiga can do. That's part of the reason it was so popular at the time. No one had ever seen graphics and sound married like this. So it was so it caused people to gape in amazement that at least initially they weren't bothered by the fact that the gameplay was so thin. And here there's some absolutely wonderful music in the background, and each area has its own theme. I'm just being sent back to the same place every time. Generally, the movement controls are responsive. And the combat moves. Oh bloody hell! And the combat moves are responsive as well. It's just the biggest problem is that you have to time them perfectly, otherwise you're going to take a hit. I mean, with these, for instance, if you're just slightly too far away, your punch won't connect and you won't hit them. See, even this piece of music's different. I think it was David Whittaker who did the music in this game. Oh, damn it. It's also not entirely obvious where you're supposed to go, which is also a bit of a nuisance. Anyone who's expecting this game to hold their hand is going to be disappointed, because it won't. You got to figure it out for yourself where you need to go. Oh, God. See, I didn't quite time that punch there, and then I took a hit. And this game also has a problem of respawning enemies, which is really frowned upon. Not to mention quite tedious. The main sprite's really well animated. Notice the hand of that skeleton up there too. The hand. Animated. So it's nice little touches like that that also help to make this game get a lot of the attention that it ultimately did. Careful because of oh, blast. Otherwise that happens. That was pretty, wasn't it? I just need to swap over some discs. So that's Shadow of the Beast for the Commodore Amiga. It's hard to tell whether it can really be considered a classic anymore. I mean, yes, it is arguably the thing that that helped to stop a whole slew of Atari ST ports that were prevalent in the run up to that particular point in that year in 1989. And then suddenly got this, which made great use of the Amiga's hardware, both visually and its audio. I mean, look at the depth. Look at the tonal perspective in that picture alone, for instance. But I'm not going to do that, otherwise I'll have to talk over the music. So graphics, really, really nice. Loads of atmosphere, stunningly beautiful backgrounds with loads of layers of parallax scrolling. Beautifully animated sprites. Other little animated touches here and there, such as that aforementioned skeleton wiggling its fingers. I mean, everything about the way things are drawn just absolutely sucks you into this strange world. Sound. Well, you got the thumb punch and kick sound effects, as well as other sound effects here and there, depending on what's happening, such as picking up items and the like. And of course you've got that gorgeous music, which still sounds really good all these years later. Remember, this is a game that came out in 1989, and to think it sounded that good even back then. So graphics and sound are top notch, and still really hold up really well today. And in fact, so much so that when that remake of Shadow of the Beast happened on the PS4 a couple of years ago, my understanding is they actually included this original Amiga game as an unlockable extra on that particular version. However, the gameplay as a game, it does falter somewhat due to some really unfair game mechanics and other things that have since become really frowned upon, like respawning enemies, and the fact that your attacks have to be absolutely immaculately timed. Otherwise, if you're just slightly too late, you're going to take a hit. I mean, it's one thing to make a game challenging, but it's quite another when it borders on the line of unfair. And unfortunately, whether we like it or not, Shadow of the Beast does fall into that latter camp. It is quite unfair at times, and well, it's quite unfair a lot, really. Especially if you're new to it and don't know what's going to happen when, and you pretty much need to in this game. I mean, there are even cheap things like, just before I went into that door in the tree, there's a really hard to see trap that will snap on your ankles if you don't jump over where it is. It is possible to see it, but it's so small that it's very easy to miss. But once you know where it is, it's easy enough to avoid. But trying to remember everything else in addition to that, that's where it gets hard. So, and generally the gameplay is a tad thin. All you're really doing is wandering around and occasionally punching, kicking things, maybe throwing the odd lever here and there if you're lucky, but by and large, it's the graphics and sound effectively hide what is in reality a pretty simplistic title that hasn't really aged very well at all. I mean, if you want to show off what the Amiga can do, be my guest. But in terms of gameplay, it's not gonna win anyone over anymore. I mean, even when the game was re-released on budget, the even the same magazines that reviewed it favourably on its original full price release were far less kind to it, when it was re-released at a lower price on budgets, because it is really unfair at the best of times. Anyway, I know I could be muddying the waters somewhat by giving such harsh criticism of the game of a game that that a lot of people consider to be a classic, especially in terms of graphics and sound. But this just goes to show that gameplay is far that's entertaining, and the right level of challenge and generally fair is more important than the audio visual splendor. And whether you like it or not, Shadow of the Beast just doesn't fall into the category that can be deemed fair and the right pitch of difficulty and so forth. So I am judging it as a game. I'm not oblivious to its to how wonderful its graphics and sound are. They are beautiful, and they still look great now, as I said. But the gameplay isn't that great if you really think about it. So I'm going to give Shadow of the Beast on the Amiga 5 out of 10. It's generally seen as a triumph of style, well, sort of a triumph of style over substance. On the plus side, it did pretty much put an end to the constant stream of games for the Amiga that were directly ported from the ST and therefore didn't make best use of the hardware. But it still doesn't alter the fact that as a game, this just doesn't really hold up anymore. So anyway, hope you enjoyed this review. And I do apologise if people don't agree with me, but one of the problems with opinions, it is a very personal thing, and what you might think is a classic, someone somewhere in the world is going to think is an absolute turkey. I mean, this is far from being a turkey. It's just not great as a game. It's just not enough to it, and it's just unfair. But nonetheless, I hope it hasn't put you off supporting my channel any. And for those who stick by me in particular, I do appreciate you supporting my channel, and and for those who do feel a bit upset that I gave this game a fairly low rating, I'm hoping that just around the corner you'll be looking at another review of mine that you'll find less disagreeable in your view. Anyway, I've waffled on about that enough. Thanks for watching this video anyway. Texie88 out.